All right. Wow, we're live. And I'm so happy to be here. My name is Oshin. This is my buddy Eric, and who came up
Hey,
with a really great idea of doing a podcast. So this is it. This is Broadway Out West, or Bro Wow. This is our first pilot episode. It's not like we're auditioning for anybody, but this is the first episode. We're gonna dive into a lot of fun topics. So I'm Eric again. I'm Oshin again. This is my buddy Eric. So what we're gonna do with our Bro Wow podcast is talk about a bunch of really fun topics. We're gonna keep it light, but we're also gonna talk about some serious stuff in the news and put our own spin to it. But when we talk about our own spin, I'm gonna put the East Coast spin because I live both on the East Coast and West Coast, and then Eric here is gonna put his West Coast spin because he's a native Californian and he really, really, really loves the West Coast. So that's what's gonna make this fun. We're not your average podcast. We're gonna talk about some topics other people maybe talk about, but it's gonna have an incredibly unique perspective for both coasts. My name's Oshin again. Uh, my background's in advertising, and I dabble with startups. And I'm here to talk about different topics that I'm interested in, from popular current events to history to business to pretty much everything in between. And Eric, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick. But I mean, you come from a background working in so many different things, including in entertainment yourself. You're definitely not camera shy, and having this podcast was completely your idea. So I'm just gonna hand it off to you right now. Yeah.
yeah, hi. My name is Eric. Yeah, Oshin and I have been, buddies since we've known each other since we were little kids here in LA. Because I was born and raised here in LA, in Glendale to be exact. We're Armenian, and everybody, whoever has been in the LA area, is aware of the big Armenian population, especially in Glendale. So yeah, I was born and raised in Glendale, and I knew Oshin since we were very young. We've been friends ever since, and so he's now on the basically now on the East Coast, and I've been part of the entertainment business in the past. I work for government now. I do a completely different job now than that entertainment business. But I've done acting. I've done different things in in the entertainment business in the past. But yeah, so I just thought we got to put this. I was telling Oshin all this time. We got a lot of things to talk about, and we should have a podcast. It's nowadays it's one of the best things to do, and people have actually been telling us to start one, that we should start one, and we're kind of putting it off for a while. So now this is the first episode, and Oshin has been on the East Coast now so long that he's pretty much a New York guy more than LA, and I, as he mentioned, I love the West Coast here. There's good and bad to everything, but we're gonna kind of discuss that a lot on the podcast just over
Yeah.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll take it from there, Eric. How we're going to be unique is you guys probably are listening to this, probably listen to podcasts. I feel like a lot of them are really boring. They try to be funny, but they're not. They talk about a lot of serious topics. But then so does like the news, so does KTLA, CNN, all these sites. If I really want to get too serious, I'll just go to the website itself. I'll save myself the time. We're going to talk about similar topics, but we're going to give it humor. Humor you cannot uh, train for. It's natural. Eric's a funny guy. I'm a funny guy. And we're going to bring that. We're here to entertain you. We're not here to bore you, you know? And we're not here to read like CNN. It's kind of like when you're in a presentation, right? And somebody's reading from the slides, right? Everybody's been there. That's like the worst thing in the world. You just want to get out of that room. We're not going to do that. We're not here to bore you. So we're going to talk about stuff that's relevant and interesting. And I'll just start from there. Eric, so let's dive in. First topic. A lot happened here in LA, obviously, the last week and a half. Unless you're in outer space, there's a lot of wildfires that went on in the LA area. Now, in your opinion, is this the worst thing that you've ever seen in LA?
Yeah, I remember this is definitely the worst. Up until now, I would say the worst here in LA was in the early '90s, the big Northridge earthquake. We were kids at the time. We were very young, and I remember that caused a lot of damage here in LA. Specifically, that's what they call it, the Northridge earthquake, because that was pretty much the epicenter. The city of Northridge, the campus of CSUN, the university, was completely destroyed. In fact, it's funny, They said they always said that was the best thing that ever happened to the C7
I
campus.
love that when I hear
Yeah, they
that.
rebuilt. They got so much funding, government funding, to rebuild their entire campus. Really
I was
nice.
kind of hoping the
But
same thing
yeah,
would happen to
other
UCLA. Get a whole new campus too. Part of that, you know. Nah, I'm just
yeah.
joking.
Oh no, yeah. It was a big event. I mean, it was a lot of damage caused all across. But I think this one takes the cake now. These fires have been just insane. I actually got evacuated, as you know. I live in Glendale, but I live on the portion of Glendale that's very close to that Pasadena Altadena area. So I remember it was a Thursday morning. We woke up and it was like I don't know if we might have to evacuate. And I was thinking, like, I was in denial. I was like, nah, I don't think it's that close to us. And then when I came outside Thursday morning, I looked up and the sky was like orange. It was like the sky was like orange, and I could smell the fire. So then we got the notifications like it's mandatory. You guys got to evacuate. So we went over to my sister. All of us went over to my sister's house. She lives actually in like the Northridge, Porter Ranch area. We went there for a day and a half, and then we were allowed back. And it looks like they kind of got a handle on it now. So I doubt we'll have to be evacuated again. But
Yeah, they got a handle on it after it burned down like half the city.
Yeah,
It was major.
My younger sister's, huh?
Yeah. No, it was a major thing. I mean, they got a handle on it, but it caused a lot of destruction.
My younger sister, her school, she's taught at, she's a speech language pathologist at that Elliott Magnet School in Altadena. That we watched it burn down on the news. So now she has no school to go teach it. They're gonna try to come up with some new location temporarily until they rebuild, so she can go back to work. But that whole Altadena was a nice area. Remember, there was a time you even were saying years back that you would even buy a house there.
Yeah, it's a nice area. I feel like they're going to rebuild that area. I think to be honest with you, I think that has more of a chance of somebody rebuilding in that area than Palisades does. Because for anybody who's been to Altadena, it's still a pretty residential area. Like, it's near Pasadena, and there's not a lot of red tape as much as like Palisades, where it's so dry and you're in the middle of the woods. And a lot of those homes have been there for about over 100 years, maybe. And there's a lot of red tape. I don't even think a lot of people are going to be able to rebuild. I think Altadena is going to be a lot easier than it is in the Palisades. So, but I mean, we live in Glendale. We've had our share of scares, but we made it.
Yeah.
So how did it feel getting back to your house?
Yeah. When we went back, it was like I could still smell somewhat smoke out on the drive to my house, but when I got inside, luckily inside.
Sure that wasn't your neighbor?
Smell at all. Huh?
You sure that wasn't your neighbor?
Yeah, man. I mean, my neighborhood it's got a lot of brush. So there had actually been fires in my area when I was before we ever moved there, like decades ago. There had been fires there. My personal house had had the. Again, years before we were there, I heard that the roof had been on fire at one point, and then a house about a block down had completely burned to the ground before. So, it's when you live in a brush area, and like those, what people love about California, which is that natural environment, you're gonna like in Palisades, you're gonna have a lot of risky. You're living. You know that something like that might happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that you're totally right.
How do you like it in? Are you looking forward to going back to because you're visiting here right now and here in LA? Are you looking forward to going back to New York?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I work probably less than 2 blocks away from World Trade Center, like Ground Zero. I walk by it every day, and it's in Lower Manhattan. I work off Broadway and Nassau, Broadway and Liberty right there, which is right across. There's a park in between the World Trade Center campus and the Oculus and my building on Broadway. No matter what they do, they've done a really great job of building up that area, making it incredibly nice. They built Performing Arts Center. The Oculus is an amazing, very beautiful shopping complex. I mean, tremendous job, but there's a sadness every time you walk by it. And I don't think New York could ever shake that. I think no matter what, I mean, I'm 41 years old, so I very clearly remember the events that happened 9/11 and then afterward. And in fact, I saw the original, Twin Towers when I had visited New York in 1998, and they were just massive. So when you walk by it every day, no matter what they did in the whole area, cleaning everything up and modernizing it, there's still a sadness to it. But I'll say this, man. What I saw this last week in LA was so intense. Granted, I wasn't there when 9/11 occurred, but it's kind of odd that going back to New York City might actually give me a little bit of peace. It has been an incredibly stressful last week and a half in LA. I just feel like there's bad energy. There's this energy there, very tense. And for somebody who grew up in LA, I mean, I don't think I've experienced that since the Northridge earthquake, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, and even before these fires happened, you and I were always discussing this. How in the last, specifically in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even before that, but especially in the last 4 or 5 years, people have been leaving LA. Like, you remember how it was we're in 2025 now, but you remember in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003 or so, like, everybody wanted to be in LA, and it was packed. Everywhere you'd go, it'd be packed, whether it's bars, restaurants, nightclubs, just nightlife. Everything was so happening. And what do you think? We always talk about this. What do you think's happened in the last 4 or 5 years? Obviously, we know 4 or 5 years ago was COVID, but which kind of sparked all this to a higher degree than ever. But what do you think it is that why people have been leaving in droves, basically?
okay. I think that's a very fair question. I mean, I have my opinion. You've heard it before. I feel like it's a combination of things. I think one of the huge reasons is things have gotten very expensive over time, right? LA, a lot of cities, New York's been, everything increased in price too. So it's not just the expense, right? You have to look at other things. When I say not just the expense, I'm not talking about not just the rent, right? Because New York has very expensive rent and so does LA. But think about this. What's the kind of different industry between New York and LA? New York's more finance, right? Obviously other things, but what's LA? What's its number one thing? When people think about LA, what do they think about? They don't think about finance.
Entertainment business.
Yeah, so in my opinion, and I'll ask you this question, I mean, inform the readers, what kind of happened with the entertainment business the last few years with COVID and then afterward? So,
well, obviously, after COVID happened, a lot of people started working. First, people lost their jobs, and because so many businesses shut down. So now they don't have any income. So now they have to leave back to a lot of the people that came from other states originally to LA, to pursue that dream of whatever that is, whether it's entertainment or another industry. Because of not having enough money, they had to go back to where they were, the state or wherever they came
yeah.
from. And then eventually with COVID, things started becoming to where you don't have to physically live in LA. You can do things remotely, especially things like in the entertainment business with auditions, with interviews, anything like that. You can just do it. You can live literally out of the state, and then if you book a job, you can always come back and do your job and then go back and so forth. So
Yeah.
that's another huge part of it.
Yeah, and just to pick up where just to piggyback off what you just said, that's exactly the case. I've met a few people, at least here in LA, that said the same thing. That said, you know what? It was when COVID happened. Number one, they shut down a lot of the restaurants, right, and the bars. Well, guess what? If you're in the entertainment business and you're here, you got to pay the bills somehow. So a lot of people in that business were waiting tables. They were bartenders. They worked in hospitality, right? So when it's shut down, obviously you're not going to be able to pay that kind of rent. And so what happened was a lot of them moved back to where they were originally from, and that's not Los Angeles. Add to that the fact that a lot of these studios started doing Zoom auditions for the first time, and where you could just go on Zoom, audition. If you get the part, then you'll fly out here, you'll do it, and you can go back. It shook up the whole way things were done. And now for the first time ever, if you're an actor or an actress, you don't have to live here to necessarily land a role in a commercial or a TV show or even probably a movie. And so they just, I mean, it's the heartbeat of LA, whether you're from the Valley or the West Side or many parts of the city. If you don't have to be here to make it onto a show or a movie, then there's really no incentive to be here at all. And so they never came back. And I feel that emptiness is from basically disruption. That's the best way to explain it in the entertainment industry. But that's not the full story. But I feel that's one of the reasons why it's empty here in LA. I mean, would you agree? Or
Yeah, I've definitely noticed. It's funny. You would always bring it up, and I'd be like, "No, maybe it's just in our, it's not as bad as you think." And then I just recently, especially recently, I started seeing it firsthand. Like people have, I mean, yeah, the bars, the restaurants, the nightlife used to be packed full of people. Now it's and even we even as you know we've asked the staff at a lot of these places, and they said they agreed with us. They said, "Yeah, people are just not." We're not as busy as we used to be. As you mentioned, people have been leaving. Actors, actresses, people in the entertainment business have been going back to where their state of origin. I mean, where they originally were from, whether it's I don't know, Texas or Ohio or somewhere else, and they're doing Zoom auditions, or maybe they just completely gave up on that business and they just went back to where they were from. And also the entertainment business. Remember with the strikes that happened, like about 2 years ago, the entertainment strikes. It was like 1 or 2 years ago.
oh yeah, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
I mean, that was
and
huge
we
too.
have friends in the
That shook it
entertainment
up.
business. We have a particular friend that we know in the entertainment business that he says that like it's not what it used to be. It's just so hard to do anything in this business anymore. So it's just kind of drying up.
And then also, again, I mentioned it's expensive. Like rent is pricey. The cost of living, from groceries to other, important things you need, are expensive in both cities like New York and LA. But one thing also is it's cheaper to get around in New York. So for $35 a week, you can ride the subway and the buses for an entire week, 24 hours a day, and pretty much go anywhere. And so it's incredibly cheap. Whereas in LA, you don't want to risk driving. If you go out, right, you have a couple of drinks, you don't want to do that. So the only realistic option is to Uber it. And Uber's not cheap. It costs to go like 10 miles from, let's say, the Valley, from Sherman Oaks over to Santa Monica. You're talking about like a $70 maybe round trip, right? And that adds up. So I think that's also what keeps people away from going to the bar areas, the entertainment districts, is the fact that it's also expensive to do that now. And times are tight. People are paying a lot more for groceries and other, things they need to survive. So more for rent.
The other big difference in LA versus New York, of course, is that we drive here in LA. It's a car city. You drive. So we don't have we always talked about it. We don't have a proper transportation system like anything like they do in New York. With the subway system in New York. So people drive here, and as you mentioned, if you go out, you want to go to a bar, a restaurant, you want to have a few drinks, you have to take an Uber, and that costs, as you mentioned, that costs money. And also, we don't like walking so much here in LA, but in New York, it's you take the subway and then
You walk
everywhere.
You walk, you climb out of the station, you go up the stairs. It's a whole physical thing. But you nailed it. Like, it's just so much cheaper to go out in New York. I mean, you don't pay that Uber necessarily. You don't have to. In fact, if you take an Uber in New York City, it takes longer to probably get there because it's gridlock traffic in the middle of in Manhattan. So,
What do you think? You living now that you're in New York, and everybody knows LA is very expensive. But would you say so? New York is generally it's known as even more expensive than LA. But it's kind of weird because I keep
but it depends.
hearing
It
things
depends. It depends. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. I always hear they say LA. I'll hear like LA is the most expensive, then I'll hear New York's even more expensive. Like it always goes back and forth. I think because LA is more of it's more like you buy a single family home here with a backyard.
Yeah.
It's more known for it's like a suburban type of thing. Whereas New York, especially where you are in Manhattan, you live in an apartment building or a condo or something. So
Yeah.
and those are very expensive in New York. So I don't know which one's more expensive, but yeah, LA's like real estate market is insane. I mean, it's you can't buy a proper single family home under $1 million now.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. So yeah, for New York City, you have to remember that New York. When they say New York, right? New York City, it's essentially five boroughs, right? Boroughs are like kind of like mini cities, but they're not very small. So those five boroughs are Brooklyn, which has like 3 million people. If Brooklyn wasn't part of New York, it would probably be the sixth largest city in America. At one point, it was the second largest city over 100 years ago. So Brooklyn is a part of that. Then you have Queens. Queens is the one where you have a lot of homes, so like single family homes. Like if you want to start a family, you're not going to necessarily be in Midtown Manhattan. Brooklyn is still a more younger crowd. Queens is more mature and single family. But then you have Bronx, more industrial. It's pretty rough out there. You know, you kind of go out there just for Yankees games, really. And then you have Staten Island, which is incredibly residential. It's a way older crowd. But to your point, Midtown Manhattan skews everything. It's so expensive. Not Midtown, sorry, Manhattan itself is so expensive. When you talk about New York, like the expensive parts of New York, you're talking mainly about essentially Manhattan and a good chunk of Brooklyn. And most of Queens, I mean, Queens is mostly residential. They have some very nice neighborhoods, but yeah, Manhattan is the most expensive by far.
So how's it? You know, we've been hanging here in LA. We recently got into, especially since you've been talking about New York pizza. We've been checking out all the pizza places around here, and as you know, I love the new Prince Street pizzas that are popping up everywhere here, in not only LA, but like it started in New York, obviously, but they're all
I've
over
never
now
been
in
to
LA.
Prince Street Pizza in New York. That is, I've been to here.
Your favorite? I remember when I came to visit you in New York. Your favorite's that artichoke, right?
Yeah, artichoke basil. That's the full name. I just call it artichoke, and it is a huge slice, and especially great late night. Uh, it's like this. It's a very unique. They have a artichoke pizza, literally, which is very famous. But they also have one called Staten Island, which is awesome. What's the one that you like at Prince Street that you usually get?
Oh, my favorite. Like what type of? My favorite's the naughty pie.
Yeah.
It's the one
So
that I love. I love the ones that I like. I like the regular thin, you know, the New York style big slice too. But I like the Sicilian, which that's the naughty pie at Prince Street.
yeah.
It's the square. It's the thick squares, and the naughty pie has that white. It has that vodka. It's like a vodka sauce or something. That's really good. I like that one. But I also like the regular. I think there was a regular one called big slice called. The something print. It was like I forgot the name of it, but yeah. But overall, I like that naughty pie, those thick Sicilian style.
What else? What like if you have to say top, let's say three or five or how many you want to name, pizza places that you like. What are they?
Um, I gotta say, well, now Prince Street
Domino's,
pizza is
pizza.
like my favorite. I know. Have you heard of Lucifer's Pizza?
I've seen it. I've never had it.
They have a few locations. They have one in Hollywood. They have one in the Los Feliz area in LA. I like that. And then there's this other one called Vito's Pizza. It's called Vito's Pizza. It's
Oh.
like on I want to say on La Cienega,
Uh huh.
around there, in like West Hollywood, around there. Vito's Pizza.
And what makes that one special?
It's I like that it has that thick deep dish style, like that thick style of pizza. I really I like that. And then there's also a place in Eagle Rock called Casa Bianca. It's more of a sit down place, and they bring.
Oh yeah.
It's well known if you're in the LA area, you've heard about it. It's called Casa Bianca in Eagle Rock. So I like. Yeah, pizza. You know, there's so many different types of pizzas. You know, sometimes you're in the mood for the thinner stuff, the thin slice when you're just on the go, like in New York when you just fold it over, like John Travolta style in Saturday Night Fever when he's walking down the street and he just gets that pizza and folds it and he's just And then I also sometimes just like that sit down, like the deep dish style. I also had some really good pizza in Chicago. The Chicago style deep dish pizzas are good too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I'll say it from a New York perspective. My I haven't tried all of them, obviously. The best that I've tried in terms of a sit down place called Roberta's. They have their most famous location is in Brooklyn. There's also one near Williamsburg. It's incredibly good, and they just opened one up near Penn Station in Madison Square Garden. It's incredibly good. It's a must try. That's number one. More of a sit down spot. Number two over there, like if you want a late night, you already said artichoke. Number three, Joe's Pizza is very famous here. Or it's more of a chain. Nobody really. I don't enjoy it. It's more of a tourist thing. But I like Bleecker Street Pizza in West Village. That's a good spot. There's so many places to go try. Those are just the three that kind of stick out. But there's one called Jets. It's Detroit style pizza actually. That's supposed to be good. And everywhere you go, you have Sicilian style. You have the squares. There's even another Detroit style place. It says Lions and Tigers and Squares. Oh my, which is kind of cool. It's like their football and baseball teams, and it's kind of interesting. It's right across from this bar called Trailer Park that looks like a trailer park too. So it's really hilarious. Yeah, it's in Chelsea.
Wow, man.
Yeah, a lot of good spots, man. Yeah.
But you don't really eat a whole lot of pizza when you're there, right? Like it's just once in a while.
No.
What's your favorite type of food in New York? Is you recently have been a lot into Greek food, right? Greek cuisine.
Yeah, I mean it really depends on how busy you are, what time of day or night it is. You're not gonna find like Greek food like a restaurant open at like 3 in the morning. Like pretty much in New York City, there's a lot of places open at 3, but they're mostly like fast food style or like pizza places. But at the same time, the carts, so like everything from hot dog to halal to really great Indian food. There's a place outside my building on Broadway. I swear to you, 24 hours. I've seen incredible storms roll in where it's flooding on the street, insane amount of rain. These dudes are out there open. They don't even have customers. They're still there open in like a flood situation, dude. It's pretty gnarly. But you can always get like halal guys from the cart. You get pizza. The street food scene in New York is pretty amazing, 24 hours a day. So.
Do you remember back years?
Of course,
ago,
yeah, bagels.
Oh yeah, bagels are good in New York, huh?
In the morning, yeah.
Totally different in New York than anywhere else. Do you remember it was like years ago? It was like probably I want to say like 10 years ago. We were, that was the first time you noticed that they have those halal carts in New York, and then you were saying that if they brought that over here to LA, that would be a huge business, and I guess eventually they did, right?
Well, yeah, they made it into a chain, right? The halal guys thing. So, but in New York City, you don't need it that place that much. It's mostly tourists. Like even the car. If you're near Madison, or rather Fifth Avenue or Sixth, they're on one of those corners. Then you'll try it. Otherwise, I think it is Sixth. I think it is Avenue of the Americas. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in New York, you're just walking a lot, huh? You're just like you're on your feet. I'm not when I was there visiting. I wasn't used to like I work out. I'm an active person, but just walking to get somewhere, walking so far to get somewhere was not something I was used to. So it was like, you remember that first day I was there? We looked on our Apple, on an iPhone and where it tracks your steps, and I was at like 30,000 steps. One day it was 30,000 steps. The next day it was like 25,000 steps. It was insane. It was like, I was tired. Your legs are just beat. Like by the time you get back to your hotel, you just want to knock out and. That's how, obviously that's not how long you walk when you live there. I mean, you're not going to walk. That's because I was just visiting, but you walk a lot there. So that's a huge difference from LA.
Yeah, which means that
we're here in LA.
Whatever you eat, you burn. Yeah.
Yeah, here in LA, we like race to. I mean, we don't even want to go like 30 feet away. We want to park right in front of the store we're going to. Like we don't even want to walk 30 seconds to we don't even want to park far away to where we have to walk even a short distance to the store we're going into. But in New York, you got to walk blocks and blocks to get to where you want to go, even when you take the subway.
Yeah, it's definitely so. Whatever you eat, you're definitely gonna burn. That's the good thing. And the thing is, when you walk that much and you're physical, you don't get hungry as often. To be honest with you, so you'll eat something light in the morning, probably something light at lunch, and then nighttime you'll go. It's very hard to go. There's so many amazing restaurants in New York City, but for the best ones, you really do need a reservation. And so it's not like last minute you show up at like a really, really great restaurant. So you have to kind of plan ahead, but you'll have a really nice dinner and then drinks afterward, and you'll make an evening out of it. But for like lunch and breakfast, even a lot of people on the weekends they'll eat a good breakfast because they'll go for brunch. It's a real big New York thing. Like brunch is huge in New York. Yeah, I don't really see that often here in LA. So yeah.
Yeah. So what happened recently? Oh, by the way, with the recent World Series, remember what happened? That was like a dream situation with the Dodgers versus Yankees. In fact, I had kind of visualized that in a funny way. I visualized that maybe a couple of months before it happened. I was like, imagine if this year or soon we have something like Yankees versus Dodgers. That would be awesome. And it actually ended up happening. And you were in New York when that was all happening. What was your experience like when you were there with?
I mean, I am a Dodgers fan too, and in fact, I went to where Ebbets Field used to be, and it was like a pilgrimage for anybody who's a baseball fan in general to find out where it was. It's a housing project now, and you really have to dig deep and find this one plaque. It was near a storage closet. Nobody would know from the street. That's where the home plate was, where Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, right, in professional sports. And it's just an amazing place to go and visit and all the history there. But I mean, to see the Dodgers, Brooklyn Dodgers, that then moved to LA, play the New York Yankees, and there's a lot of history when they both shared New York City, right? And that translated now into LA versus New York, which is always a rivalry. So gave it a whole other meaning. But it's cool because their roots are both in New York City, and now they're rivals. They were rivals back then, but now they're coastal rivals. So. Yeah. And
so what happened when you were in New York when all that was happening? What they were giving you hell, right? The New York fan, the Yankees.
Yeah, Yankees fans are pretty rough in general. So it's a situation where anywhere, even here in LA. The other day I was wearing my Yankees hat, and there's these guys who are like, "Oh, New Yorker," they're trying to start trouble, but I just pretend they didn't even say anything. And so it's just people just try to be a big shot, I guess. So it is what it is.
You were in a you were talking about there's a Dodgers bar that you went to that was a guy originally from LA that went and opened up a bar there for the Dodgers, like a Dodgers fan.
Yeah.
Bar.
Yeah, it was cool. It's called St. Mark's Place, St. Mark's Taqueria. It is absolutely a must. If you're a Dodgers fan, it was like the place to be throughout the play. In fact, all the way from the beginning to the end of the season, playoffs, World Series, it's an awesome place where you can always find a lot of Dodger fans. It felt like we were in the locker room when the World Series happened because champagne went flying. I got drenched. It was just people. Dodger fans were celebrating everywhere. Whoever walked by was incredibly shocked at what was going on because it was so loud and so fun and amazing. But we'll cover more about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You remember? You were telling me that the first Game 1, Dodgers Yankees Game 1 World Series, like that when the Yankees were in the lead, and then it was like the last inning, and obviously Freddie Freeman's walk-off home run happened. Like everybody was shocked, right? Everybody was like, all the especially Yankees fans were they were just so depressed right as soon as that happened.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. It really obviously was a hallmark moment for LA sports, and it crushed the New York fans. They were just they were frozen. They didn't know what to do. But I mean, they had their chances. It was just game one. They lost game two. Dodgers went up 2-0. New York only ended up winning one game, and it was especially painful the last game, Game 5, where they were up by 5 runs and they blew that lead, and the Dodgers came steamrolling back and won the World Series. So, but I mean, the thing is, do you remember even who played in the World Series the year before? Most people don't. Like, they don't really remember that it was the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Those are pretty small market teams. They're definitely not New York versus LA. And in fact, it had been over 40 years since the Dodgers and the Yankees had played each other. We're going all the way back to the early 80s. So everybody was loving this. True baseball fans, the Major League Baseball in general, they had to love this. This was the two giants of the game playing each other. It just doesn't get any better than that. You know.
Yeah.
Even when the Dodgers played the Red Sox, you remember that, like a few years back?
The Dodgers and Red Sox?
What? Yeah, Mookie Betts was on the Red Sox. He was an incredible player before he came to Dodgers. It was a really good matchup, but it's not really a rivalry for baseball. If it was Lakers Celtics, it's a whole other thing. But like Red Sox, they're still a huge, big team, popular, but it's not the Yankees versus Dodgers, right? So
yeah, Yankees Dodgers is very similar to, and I heard a lot of people saying this too, that it's like Lakers Celtics.
Yeah, it's in baseball. It's because the thing is though, with Lakers and the Celtics, they both didn't come from Boston or they both didn't come from LA, right? This was East Coast versus West Coast, which is like Lakers versus Celtics too, right? But it was also insane because they're both from New York City. It's kind of like you're somebody from your family
like
leaves and joins the and then it's now like rivalry, right? It's crazy. There's a lot of history there. So when you go to Brooklyn, I mean, there are people who are like, yeah, man, Dodgers. There's a lot of people who still like the Dodgers in Brooklyn. It was one of the most painful days in that city's history when Walter O'Malley moved the team to Los Angeles. It crushed people to this day. And that was all the way back in the late 50s. So,
and now they have the Mets to kind of make up for that, right? That's why they kind of came up with
they love the Mets. Yeah, the Mets are huge. Yeah, the Mets are huge. But, I mean, they don't have that kind of history like the Brooklyn and New York. That was the real deal. So,
you think this year, you were mentioning, right? You're saying that the Yankees-Dodgers matchup will continue. Maybe it'll be a repeat.
Oh, yeah. I hope so. I feel like it's either I hope that we're going to see like multiple years where this happens. And all I got to say is it usually switches. So last year, like Dodgers won. Don't be shocked if this year, like Yankees win, right?
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. But also, the New York Mets are really good with Juan Soto. But so are the Philadelphia Phillies. They're stacked. The Braves, you can't count them out. There's a lot of Padres. There's so many teams, aside from the Dodgers, that are so good in the National League. But when you look at the American League, it's not as strong, not nearly as strong. You essentially have the Yankees, and then you have the Astros, maybe. The rest, you don't have any other legitimate contenders. Yeah. The National League is stacked with the Dodgers and those others. So
the Phillies might be, contender.
Yeah, they're a good team. Everybody thought they would go to the World Series, not the Dodgers this year because they're so stacked. But they fizzled out. Didn't work. They lost to the Mets. The Mets, nobody expected the Mets to even go to the playoffs, but they had a lot of good luck. So,
you think the Mets have a chance to go far with now?
With
Juan?
Yeah, they just added one of the best players of our entire generation. He's a great player. They paid him the most ever any player's ever gotten, so he's gonna produce. But I'm happy the Yankees did not sign him because they could take, and they already started that. They took the money that they were going to pay him and started getting better pitching, hitting. I feel like they kind of lucked out in a sense by not paying just for one player, that much money.
So what do you think with this fire here back to here in LA? What do you think about this fire situation? Is this going to drive out even more people out of the city now? What do you think? We've been hearing about we're actually we're still not done with the firefighting itself. It'll be probably another 3 or 4 days before all the fires are completely, out. But then the rebuilding starts. All the after effects come in. Obviously, tragically, people actually died. I think it was like at least 25 people died, confirmed dead. But then the financial part of it comes in, like the rebuild, and it's costs. Costs will go up of everything, of insurance, and so now, do you think that that's gonna? And also, just generally, it's just kind of a bad look where like people might start thinking, LA is not safe to live in. I guess, even though it is, but that the perception might be that it's not a desirable environment to live in necessarily. So, what do you think? Do you think it's going to drive even more people out?
Yeah, and I'll say we'll end on this note. I think that's actually a great question, and so I think that's a good segue to our next conversation or our next episode. But I'll say this: LA has a lot of resilient people. You're very proud of the city. I'm proud of the city. This is where we're from. The people here will continue, and everything's just going to be fine. It's going to be a tough few years, I think, for those people who lost their homes. But I feel, in the most part, they're going to rebuild it. And so I think they'll be fine. It's going to take a lot of time, effort, money, stress. But LA people are incredibly resilient. They love their city. So I would not count them out. I think the fire department, hats off to them. The police, everybody has done an amazing job. Not just LAFD, but from so many different cities and different counties and states. They came here and they put some of the largest fires this country's ever seen out. And so the people here are very blessed to have those sorts of crews having worked on this. So
yeah,
and I'll leave it at that.
Unfortunately, it takes these kind of events to like see the good in people. You see like how much there's food drives, there's places that people have set up for people to go get supplies and things, and just how much people are helping out. I recently saw a story that there was a woman in Malibu that was like lost in some, their house went on fire, and she was kind of in an area where the fire, like her husband was like far away from her, and the firefighters were saying we can't go in there to help wherever she is because the fires are too great. And the husband of that woman, pleaded with the firefighter, said, no, let's go and help. And this firefighter put his life on, literally. He goes, I might literally die, but I guess I'll do it. And then they went and they rescued the woman. And so like these events show how the good in people, so but unfortunately it takes these catastrophic type of events for the good of people to show. So that's one thing and also LA will rebuild, possibly be stronger than ever before. And then it's just I just feel like, as much as people complain about LA and say how and have been leaving, of course, for different reasons, that allure of LA will probably be there for, I don't want to say forever, but it'll be there for a while. The weather, that whole thing of the California dream and being the golden state. So it's different. There are some people that come to LA and to California and they can't, like, they're from the East Coast, and they feel they'll even say like I wouldn't go back to the East Coast. Like I've met so many people here that they're like originally from New York, and they're saying like I wouldn't go back to New York. They say they still like New York, they're from there, but they just can't go. Obviously the weather and the lifestyle, they just like it here, but it's just all a preference.
Yeah. Well, that's all really good input. I hope you guys appreciated our commentary today. We really appreciated talking about all these awesome topics. More to come in our next episode. We'll leave you at that. We appreciate it again, and we'll see you all soon. Take care, no matter where you are.
Exactly. And we will have guests also coming up. So stay tuned for that. We'll have some good guests on. And that's us signing out. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Wow podcast. Have a great day or night wherever you are.
Yep. Bye.